Thank you everyone for joining today. We're going to be running through what's new in the world of imports for the Triton 2024.1 release of GeoGraphix. We're going to run through a couple of examples of the spreadsheet interface for importing. It'll be changed in the 2024 release, as well as the import integration tools for TGS data. And so we'll kind of run through some examples of those as we go through here. And just a couple things to point out with these tools first. For the spreadsheet import interface changes, the first thing is that this is no longer a macro file running within Excel. This will be a import window that'll pop up within GeoGraphix where we can apply our file. And so what this means is when we work with our Excel files, we can work with normal Excel files like the XLS sheets and CSV and other tab or other delimited files like we did previously. But now this opens up the opportunity to work with Excel Online files. Previously, the macro file would not work in Office Online functionality. We've also added an auto mapping method within the spreadsheet importer. So when you're going through to bring in your data, you can let it auto map all of the tables and fields that you want to import your spreadsheet into, and then kind of go back and tweak some things as needed. If it doesn't match the column that you're expecting it to. As well as options to preserve or overwrite your data during import. Old spreadsheet importer, when you import that spreadsheet, would automatically just go ahead and overwrite that information. Now we have options in there to preserve data as you so choose during your import process. During the import, we've also added filtering. So when you have your spreadsheet of all your well data. If you say, hey, I really just wanted to update these wells based on this filter, that we don't have to go in and clean up your spreadsheet ahead of time, you can just let it say, hey, just these wells, ignore everything else. That's all I want to bring in. And then also towards the end, surveys will be calculated automatically during the spreadsheet import, so you don't have to go and calculate yourself manually after the fact, as well as an option to update your well-based layers based on the import of that particular spreadsheet. For the TGS data integration, we've added an import tool directly into Wellbase that allows us to connect into the TGS data store, where we're able to pull down well data that we want to bring into our project. Filtering options available there to select the wells you want to bring in, either based on your project AOI, whatever AOI you have active there. You can search by state and by county, and you can also search by a well list. Just list the wells you'd want to bring in, or search for within TGS to select there. The data that we bring in from TGS is going to be header data, survey data, LAS log data, and raster log data. So we'll have options to import that data as well as options for how that data is handled. You can apply a filter during your import. So when you choose a particular state or county, if you only want a set number of wells within that particular county, to be what you're searching for during your update, you can apply a well-based filter from your project to your selection. And then at the end, a log is generated to kind of tell you what's been imported, how long the import ran, what's been updated, and so forth. Kind of give you an idea of what kind of happened, what transpired during the import process there. So with that, we'll jump into the presentation and kind of take a look at some of these import options. So right now I have Wellbase open within my project, and I'm here on the Import Export tab. And I'll start first by talking about the spreadsheet importer. So when we go to launch this tool, it'll launch in this window now as opposed to launching directly within Excel. And I'll go ahead and browse out for the file that I want to import and let that load in. And so the spreadsheet that I'm bringing in has 4 separate sheets of data that I want to bring in: header, location data, monthly production records, and some directional survey information. And again, one of those new features we've added in here is the ability to just let it go through and say, hey, read these column headers, read my sheet names, and go ahead and associate that data automatically. So I can click this auto button up here at the top, and it'll go through and map all that data out automatically, reading the information from the file that I have saved here. So for instance, well header to well header, location congress, so on. And then the column headers here within, right now I'm looking at the header sheet, UWI will ID, operator, name, so on. Not everything will get picked up. Number is technically not called number in the import methods here. It's the number sign, so I'll just need to associate that. Same with the ELEV. It's supposed to be my datum elevation, so I'll go ahead and set that. And I'm going to come over here as well and check for my FM at TD and my completion date to get those in there. I'll kind of skip some of these other ones here. So header looks good. And I can go and check sheet by sheet to see what might need to be picked up and might need to be changed. For instance, maybe I don't want footage to be here. I want footage to be in the column to the left of it. So I can just delete that out from the column header and change it to a different one. And again, just kind of grab some of these other ones here real quick for this this sheet. And then just checking some of the other ones. So oil, gas, and water. So it's also automatically removing, as I go to the drop down, it's removing any of the things that have been mapped out already. So it kind of shortens the list there for me. And again, anything that I need to be unmapped, simply select it and hit the delete key on your keyboard. And the last one I'll check, my survey. This one looks good. Will ID, MD, inclination, azimuth. That's kind of all I want to bring in there. I'll add survey point. And so I've gone through and kind of checked to make sure everything's mapped out the way that I want. So got most of the data mapped out. A few things you might need to come back and change as it's looking for specific names for those columns. And it's just usually a good idea to spot check to make sure everything's going the way that you want. If there's a particular sheet that you want to skip that it mapped out for you, little X buttons here that I can say, hey, ignore this sheet. I actually don't want to import this one. So once I've checked to make sure everything looks okay, another thing to note here is the header row information. We're indicating that in my spreadsheet, the first row are the header columns. And I can see that denoted up here at the top. So I can see that it's reading that correctly. And then data starts in the row immediately after this, row 2. Previously from the old spreadsheet, these numbers will be shifted a little bit based on how the yellow bar was being applied within Excel. So that would become row 1, header row would be 2, and then data would be row 3. But in this case, because there's no yellow bar activation, header's on 1, data's on row 2. But I can also jump that around to be a different row if I want to start further down the sheet. If it's like, say, the first 10 wells or so is something that I don't need mapped, I can just go ahead and type in there, hey, data actually doesn't start until row 11. So you are able to change that in there. This was not a delimited file, so I don't need to worry about the delimiter there, but you can set what delimiter is going to be used for any of your tab, space, comma, or any other delimited files there. So once I think everything mapped out is set and ready to go here, I can run the import down here at the bottom. And again, I'll see some different options in here than what we had at the previous spreadsheet import. So options here to add or update wells. I can say, hey, add new wells in addition to updating existing ones. Only add new wells or only update existing wells. Applying a filter to that update saying, hey, I really just want this to be done to a handful of wells. Let me apply a well-based filter from my project. Then I can go out and find that filter. Preserve options and overwrite options. Again, how do I want to handle that if there's data already existing in the project? Leave it the way that it is and only add the new information. Data is out of date. Let's go ahead and overwrite that. Or just replace everything altogether for the entire file that I bring in. Even the option to ignore protected tabs. So if you've got things like survey data and stuff like that protected, the import won't overwrite that information. But if you do need it to overwrite some of that without having to go and unprotect it, import, and then go back and reprotect it again, we can just allow it to ignore that if needed. And then your extent options, again, very similar to ASCII files. Do I need to expand my extents to include any new wells that may be outside of my current extents? Or just say, hey, only read what my current extents are and only include those wells. It really only will work in cases where there's coordinate information in the file that you're going to be bringing in. Units here are English, coordinate system set and ready to go there. And again, the option to calculate the deviated surveys during my, my import so that all the information is going to be set and ready to go. And then your options, very similar to what you had over in well-based, where you have your calculate survey tool. Same kind of options will apply within there. So I can go ahead and let that run my import, and it's going to go through and read all the information that I've mapped out, get that data imported, and then towards the end, if there's any issues that may have come up there, a little log file will tell you what was updated, what was added, what was calculated, and I can kind of check to see, hey, might be a particular row in there where there's a bad value, and I know for a fact that there is a bad inclination value in one of my wells that I might need to go back and check to fix, and it kind of tells you which well it was and the depth marker there for that table. But again, just checking to see what was added, what was changed. So log file there to kind of help you read that. And there's the option to update my well layer. So I can go through here and choose the layers that I want to update for this particular project. You can select multiple different layers that you have within there, or just check the ones that you want. So for instance, if I just want to do the one, let it go ahead and update that layer, and I'll go through and read it and do that. So again, the same bulk layer update tool that you see within GeoGraphix, I can do that right after the import without having to search it myself. Okay, so there's your changes to the spreadsheet importer. I think making it a little bit easier to handle some of those files outside of Excel. No longer have to rely on the working macro file there, or if it gets blocked by any other application or anything else like that. So this makes it a little bit easier to handle that data, as well as the auto mapping tool, simplifying the process for you a bit. Might have to go and fine tune a few things to make sure that all the columns are mapped correctly, but you no longer have to go and do every single one of them by yourself. Okay, so I'll move on now, and we'll take a look at the TGS data importer. So we'll get a little button here now in the import export tab, where I can connect into the connection tool there. So given your credentials, let's put those in here real quick. And once I get connected, then that's going to pull up the information from TGS that's available to me here. Now again, filtering options where I can go out and search for what wells do I want to bring in specifically for this project, again based on state and county, based on country, based on a list of well IDs, or just based on my current project area. So for instance, this case, I'll kind of search by state and county, pull up Montana, and I'm going to search for Roosevelt County, and these are kind of the wells that are in my project area here. And so I get the list of wells, about 1,400 wells here. And I can see the information that I have available to me. I can go through and kind of check to make sure it all looks okay. But if I think it's going to be okay, I can go ahead and run that import. So again, options here for how to handle that data during the import process. I'm either adding new wells and updating existing, only add new wells, only update existing. Same options you saw there with the spreadsheet importer. If you want to apply a filter that'll update, again, same way it was handled over there in the spreadsheet import. So these options here are very similar between the other two tools here. The only difference here is this data options, the data that I'm pulling from TGS. What do I want to bring in with this particular file? So again, this is just going to be headers, surveys, log curves, and raster logs. And then I'll have options in here for some more specifics on that. So header data, name, number, operator, TD, so on from there. If there's anything specifically that I want to include or not include, I can simply go through and toggle those options off. Deviation surveys, if I want to bring those in, log curve data, and again, options there. Am I bringing this into an existing curve set that I've already got in the project? Am I letting it auto create the curve sets, import 1, import 2, very similar to how we handle LAS imports now? Or again, I can create one on the fly here to where I want to input this data to. Just write this into my TGS set that I've got in here already. And again, places where I'm adding curves or updating curves for existing wells, how am I going to be handling that data? Copy the curve, preserve it, replace it, or replace the entire set and just kind of start everything from scratch. So I'd say just leave the curve as is and only kind of add the new information. And again, filters if I want to specify specific mnemonics or anything else like that. And then also applying a suffix to a curve if I want to note that, hey, this is a TGS version of this curve. That way, if I have data from other vendors, this is primarily for if I'm inputting into other curve sets. I'm generating one specifically for TGS in this case. But in those cases, I could have like a gamma ray and then a gamma ray TGS or something to note that, hey, this is where this curve came from. So I can apply that suffix option there. And also options to automatically merge splice the set with your field data sets if needed, if a well has multiple curve files that you're bringing in. So checkbox there to kind of how to apply that merge and splice, or say, no, I'll kind of handle the merge and splice myself after the fact. And then raster logs, I include those as well. Browse out to wherever I want to put those raster logs, point to a folder to say, hey, these are where I want the images to be stored, which I have a folder set up here, TGS logs. So my data is getting written into that location. If you don't specify a location, it goes into the curved data folder of my project. So just make sure you're aware of where your data is going to. If you don't want it to go into your project folder, specify a different location someplace else to write that data to. Once I think everything looks okay there, I can go ahead and start. And that's going to go out and start reading that information from those tables that I'm telling it to import, and then start reading that information in. So I'll let that run here real quick to bring some of that data in. And again, like I said, I get a little log file at the end here to tell me what information was brought in, what might have been updated, what might have been added, so I can get an idea of how that was handled. View the log file, so it'll tell me, here's all the new wells that were added, here's the ones that were updated, and it kind of tells you when the import started and when it completed, so you can kind of get an idea of how long it took to run there. And again, an option to also then update my layers to show those new wells as they were brought in. So I can go to my well spots layer there, very similar to what I did after the spreadsheet import, and let that go ahead and update to show my new information that's been brought into this project. Okay. So again, also the options there to search through, say, like an AOI. Based on whatever project I have active, I can search within the AOIs that I have within there, so that I'm only picking up wells within that particular area. So I filtered it down to my Bakken wells area, very small subset of my project area, and again, kind of limiting that search there. And now I would just see there's 21 wells within that particular area that I've got selected. So again, depends on how big or small your AOI is going to be there. But multiple different ways of searching for the information that you want to pull into there that I can then import into GeoGraphix. And again, multiple different options for how to handle and read those imports so that data comes in the way that I want and handles any existing data conflicts that may exist. Okay. And so that's it. Kind of the new import changes there within GeoGraphix. I can now kind of see that that information in my project and how that's going to be handled. It just allows you that kind of direct connection within the project with TGS data, as well as kind of the more streamlined spreadsheet import options for making that a little bit easier to manage. So again, I want to say thank you guys for joining us today, and I hope you look forward to working with this release here in the future.